Fulvio di Blasi. I'm the president of the Thomas International Center located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm very pleased to have here with us Cardinal Burke, a very old friend of the center, if I may.
Yes.
And the occasion is to talk about this wonderful book I read and studied carefully in the last few weeks. And it's titled, well, actually, I don't know the English title because I have the Italian version. I can show it to you.
The English title is Remaining in the Truth of Christ.
Excellent, okay. And it's a wonderful book. There are wonderful writers. You are one of the co-authors. There are Brandmuller, Caffarra, De Paulis, Dodaro, other 4 cardinals, and 5 with you. 5 with you, right? And some other excellent scholars. We want to know something more about it.
At the extraordinary consistory of the cardinals in February of 2014, the Holy Father wanted already to initiate the discussion on marriage and the family in preparation for the synod, and so he invited Cardinal Walter Kasper to give a lengthy presentation to all the cardinals as a kind of starting point for the discussion. And so Cardinal Kasper's presentation, in its conclusions, took the position that the Church needed to change her practice with regard, for example, to those who are in irregular unions, those who are bound by a marriage and yet have entered into another union. And so 5 of us cardinals decided that, and Cardinal Kasper asked that there be a discussion on what he had presented. He gave various arguments. So 5 of us decided that we would like to contribute to that by creating a book. We didn't have all of the competence needed to address all of the questions, and so we sought the help of 3 other scholars to assist us. Father Paul Mankowski for the Sacred Scriptures, Professor John Rist for the Fathers of the Church, and Archbishop Cyril Basil for the question of the practice of the Eastern Orthodox churches. So we got to work, and working very rapidly in order to prepare it in time for the Synod. The book was able to come out in 5 languages.
There is a big debate in the media right now in the whole world, and some people claim that this book represents some kind of challenge to the Church or to the Pope.
The book is not polemical at all. In fact, it's a very serene attempt to present what the Church has always taught and practiced. And so it doesn't, in fact, it represents something very solidly within the tradition of the Church. And as we know, the Church's teaching doesn't change. It's handed down to us from the time of the Apostles. And so this book seeks to serve that tradition by presenting it anew and presenting it in terms of questions that are being raised today. Mm-hmm. It's not a polemical work, as you've seen from reading it.
I totally agree. Actually, I'm surprised that many people thought that... I know that some people are trying to even stop this book from being, from circulating enough, and I'm really surprised. I think it's a treasure for a fair discussion.
I have to say that I believe that those who don't want the book presented or don't want the book discussed or even sold haven't read it.
Some of the things I read in these books, for me as a layperson, are kind of obvious in a sense. I mean, it's hard to believe that that really in the Synod people were discussing so much about putting in doubt some obvious points about the faith, thinking that practice and theory could be detached somehow. So is it really what happened, or maybe the media exaggerated?
No, there was a significant factor of a misunderstanding of the relationship between doctrine and discipline. It was said by a number of Synod Fathers, and Cardinal Kasper himself said that we're not touching the doctrine on marriage, we're only changing the discipline. But in fact, in the Church, doctrine and discipline are inseparably united. The discipline only exists to safeguard and to foster the teaching. And so you can't, for instance, if you say that some couples who are in an irregular union may receive the sacraments, then you're calling into question the Church's teaching with regard to the indissolubility of marriage. It's as simple as that. So I can understand why you as a layperson would wonder about that. But this idea came in, I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but it's a serious misunderstanding and it needs to be corrected.
If we allowed if we as the Church allowed people who are divorced and then remarried to access to the Eucharist without interrupting the kind of sinful relationship.
Yes.
I mean, taking care of the kids and everything, living maybe with even very good friendly relationship with the other person they had children with, but without interrupting the sexual relationship and without this intention. Wouldn't that attitude put in danger another big part of the pastoral care of the Church, which aims at making these relationships, stop somehow, and showing even through that experience that the truth of the Church and the eternal life is more important. So it's like pastoral against pastoral. It's not just an idea of being more. I don't know if this was a concern of the Synod, or some people raised this point. Or
it certainly was a concern, because a number of Synod Fathers related stories of persons in irregular unions who have children from that irregular union and can't easily, in justice, separate themselves from the other party and so forth. And these cases were brought forward as examples that the Church, in what was called a pastoral approach, should, cases in which the Church should permit the sacraments. But in fact, if the Church did that in such a case, then it calls into question the truth about the situation of the couple. What the Church needs to do with deep love for that couple is to help them to advance so that they can live in a chaste relationship. And if they're able to do that, then they're able to receive the sacraments, and at the same time, they will also be giving their children an excellent example and helping the children in the best way possible. I think that one must be very careful of confusing a pastoral approach with what I call sentimentalism. Mm-hmm. In other words, all of us feel a tremendous amount of compassion when we see a couple that are suffering because they cannot receive the sacraments. But we don't help them by ignoring the truth of their situation and just trying to give them something that isn't appropriate. In other words, to offer them the sacraments when they're not supposed to receive them. So we have to recognize that the sound pastoral approach always respects the truth of the objective situation of the parties. And in that way, we really help them. And I've heard the witness of many individuals whose marriages have broken up, but they are living because of the infidelity of one of the partners. But they're continuing to live the truth of their marriage by not seeking another partner, by leading a chaste life, honoring that marriage which they, in their heart, know exists.
It's funny to me that some people thought that this book was against the Pope, because the Pope actually invited everybody, and I liked that a lot, at the Synod, to speak their mind freely and openly without fearing anything, because he wanted everybody to talk about the Church as they experienced it and the problems of the Church and what they thought the Church needed. So in a sense, an open dialogue like the one in this book about the main topics in the Synod should be welcomed by everybody who really likes the Pope. So I would say that critics of this book probably didn't take the Pope seriously.
No, I would say so too. None of us had in our minds, I can say this because I know all of the authors well, none of us had in our minds that we were doing something against the Pope. In fact, we saw it as trying to offer a very how should we say, esteemed service to the Pope, putting our knowledge and our experience to work in trying to present these essays for the consideration of the Synod Fathers. So there's nothing, and you won't find anything in the book that has even hints at any opposition to the Holy Father or disrespect for the Holy Father.
Some people even claim that you were removed from the Signatura Apostolica because, you were punished somehow for maybe the working on this book or something like that. What do you have to say about that?
It's very simple. The Holy Father provides the answer to that question. He gave an interview in an Argentinian journal called La Nación. I believe it was in December of 2014, or at least in that time, in which he explains why he transferred me from the Signatura to the position of Cardinal Patron of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. And he says simply that he wanted someone who was very, very active and well prepared. He wanted an American and someone who could travel more. And in my conversations with him, my meetings with him since that time, he's taking a great interest in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and he wants a Cardinal Patron who can be as active as possible in helping them. So that's the answer to that question.
Excellent, I didn't know that. One last question. At a certain point in your life, you were moved from St. Louis to Rome to do something totally different. You were a pastor of a diocese and you went to direct somehow the jurisdiction of the church with a very direct experience with a lot of pathological situations in marriage of many people. And how did it change your life? And also, I was curious if it somehow gave you new insights or new ideas or new ways of thinking about the reality of marriage and the church.
Well, both positions, both the position of Archbishop of St. Louis and of Prefect of the Apostolic Signature are pastoral. There's no question about that. They're at the service of souls. But they are, as you said, very different. In St. Louis, I was having a great deal of direct contact with individuals and in a whole variety of situations, many very happy confirmations and other situations, promoting Catholic education, whatever it might be. Whereas at the Signature, I was dealing with the administration of justice in the church, and generally speaking, when there are issues of justice, it's because there's a conflict or some serious difficulty. And so it was very different for me, and it was a life, a rather monastic life, in the sense that the church does all of her processes in writing, and so I spent much of my time reading cases and then also studying the law itself to see what is the most just way to resolve the particular question at hand. For me, in the beginning, I missed very much the direct pastoral contact, to be sure, though I had occasions from time to time. A parish in Rome would ask me to do a confirmation, or I would have some other occasion to administer the sacraments. But in general, my time was concentrated on this very technical work in canon law. On the other hand, I have to say my studies that I did 5 years after I ordained were very specialized in canon law. And what I found happening was a reawakening of those things that I had learned, and then the inspiration to deepen my understanding. And at the Apostolic Signature, I was working with an exceptionally well-prepared staff, really people very expert, and they helped me a lot to deepen my understanding of particular questions, and also pointed me to areas that I could where I could fruitfully study some question that I had. So it was that mixed situation of missing very much. There's, I suppose, for any priest, there isn't anything better than being a pastor of souls, being either a parish priest or a bishop. But on the other hand, I was also very happy to be able to put those specialized studies which I had done at the service of the Universal Church, and I I found in my relationships with bishops and priests and lay people who would come to the Signatura, they were very grateful for this. Granted, the situations are difficult, and they're not the usual pastoral situations, but they're nevertheless real situations that need to be resolved in a just way. And to conclude, people say, well, what does justice have to do with the Church of Love? Well, justice is it's not sufficient, but it's the first and indispensable ingredient of love. How can I say I love you if I don't treat you justly? And so if people can't receive justice in the church, they have a very hard time believing that the church is a church of love.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I hope that many people will read and meditate.
I hope so too. Notwithstanding the fact that I'm one of the contributors, I believe that it's an extraordinarily helpful and timely book for us.
Thank you very much, Cardinal.